had white coat syndrome. She had seen her husband's motor neuron disease, her mother's dementia, her father's Parkinson's, and felt like, I'll take melanoma. It'll just all go into decline. They'll manage that, and then bye-bye. That's better than what I've seen so far. It was managed for her, and she told us how to manage it.
Your dad, my husband, I think he had a reasonable death because he didn't have long. He'd enjoyed himself. He went, and that was it, wasn't it? Within a day. That's one of the worst things about if you are a burden on people that you love.
Yeah. My father was determined not to be a burden. However, which is why he chose to fast. He wasn't fearful. He was very philosophical. He had investigated various self-termination options. We knew how to follow his lead, and so he could decide how long he lived. Yeah, which is amazing. We all felt that we could manage that at home. We gathered, and he had hospice nurses. He chose a hospice that he felt the most supportive of how he wanted to go. My mother wanted to go to a hospice home instead, and she didn't want me having to manage schedules of care. I could care for her as much or as little as was right for that day.
Yeah.
I went every day, but sometimes it was just managing her email, and the nurses did everything else. Sometimes I did almost everything because that was what I wanted. But it wasn't just for us. It was for her. She had melanoma that started in a mole, then lymph nodes, then liver, then brain. And once it was in her brain, it was hard for her to think. So I think at the end of the day, which would be around 5:30, 6, she was glad when we cleared out. And I rode the bicycle to her hospice place in the mornings and came back in the afternoon. They loved my mother, and I was absorbed into that. My brother and I were gatekeepers and managed her space. How big a party? She didn't make a lot of sense sometimes. So I ended up, when she would try to tell me things about like her obituary or what she wanted to happen, I used the recording function on my phone. So I still have some of that, which was very helpful because in the heat of the moment, it's hard to remember it all. I had a lot of trouble deciding what she wanted to do. And a nurse had a brainwave, like, would you like a gin and tonic? And she was just like, that was perfect.
Yeah.
But it was so funny. It was like feeding a baby bird. We had these little rice crackers that she enjoyed, and I was popping them in her mouth and giving her, and she was just chewing and swallowing and chewing and swallowing, just like a little creature in a high chair. And eventually I asked her, is it nice? Because she wasn't reacting, and so she said, absolutely delicious. And she never formed another word after that. I got there around 6 and she died at 8:10. So we were there, but it was very clear that she was not aware of us at that point.
Yeah.
Very, very.
Yeah, my dad wasn't, was he?
No, I don't think he was. He was happy in the morning and he'd gone by the night.
It's very interesting about this, what can feel like a gift. I feel like my father, in choosing to fast, it took about 14 days for him to die. Andy and I arrived on day 5, I think, of his fast. And he was sitting up, he'd had a bath, he felt pretty good. He could still talk with us. And so it was a few days like that before we had him in, they put a hospital bed in the bay window of their apartment so he could lie by the window because his eyes were also quite bad. He had light, and it was exactly what he wanted.
But the medical profession cannot let you die, sort of thing.
Exactly, and that it's very interesting to look at the conversation that's happening around that, because there are also doctors who are now going, this is insane.
Well, I must admit, when my mother, who also had dementia, was in hospital, she was most adamant. She wanted to go. She's a very determined woman. And when I visited her in hospital, they said she was refusing to eat, and so they'd put a tube down her, and she kept pulling it out. And they said, we're sorry, but we cannot get her to keep the tube. I said, don't let her go. I said, just don't try and force feed her. And then they said, if that you are agreeable to that, we will do that. And they did.
But this was how many years ago?
Oh, this was
40 years?
40 years?
40 years ago.
Most people end up dying there because
Yeah, exactly.
they're discovered, or hugely because they haven't made their wishes known.